Okay guys, I am here with the finale video for my tournament semifinal, Discord tournament semifinal matchup against Ronald. I'm going to do a real fast summary of the game just to start up to this point. If you didn't watch the first three videos, they're on my channel. I know they're long. I'm doing these videos including everything in them. Uh, but in any case, I do apologize. The finale's been a long time coming because I had technical difficulties. It turns out the entire turn 13 through the end of the game, plus another game I was recording with that I was playing with Mannix, which I'll let him present that one, as found out after the fact after I recorded all the rest of the game with Ronald and most of my game with Mannix. At some point, I had accidentally turned off the audio capture on my screen recorder, so everything I said was not there. It was just complete silence and just watching me play the game with no commentary from me. So unfortunately, for this last video of the series, I had to take stills and piece together um, the finale of the game, the rest of the game, and I'm going to tell it as best as I can of what I was thinking in the moment at the time, without biasing the fact that I know what the results of this game turn out to be. I'm going to try and present it as what was going through my mind during the turns. And I'm sorry, I know it's a slideshow version, but hopefully you can still get some good information out of this video and be entertained by how this game wrapped up. It was a wild one from the get-go. So this is where we left off. Was after Japan 12's turn. Getting up to Japan 12, just in case you didn't watch the previous videos, early game, the first early rounds, Germany had a great defense on the Allied shucking. I really was disrupting it. I had my fighters and bombers and Air Force just sitting up here on Northwest Europe and was really able to disrupt his Allied shuck early on. Germany, meanwhile, built up a great defense and they were super strong early on. And then, for those that watched, know my gaff came in which I had my Japan Air Force sitting on Ukraine, ready to support Berlin on a 1-2 attack on Berlin. And I missed the fact that the UK Air Force that he had here was able to wipe out my Japan Air Force, which meant they could not reinforce Berlin, which meant he then did a attack and he'd used the rest of the UK to attack Berlin, and then US came in and just wiped out Berlin, and he captured Berlin early on. I should have looked back and remembered, but it was like round 4 or 5, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it was a major blunder on my behalf not to protect my Japan Air Force, because I was relying on them coming into Germany to help defend the 1-2. So wham, lost Berlin early, but I had such a strong advantage from the early game and some of the dice and that allied messing up the allied shucking, that it actually kind of evened the game out, to be honest, even after losing Berlin. And then I was able to recapture the next turn, obviously, and then kind of rebuild back up. And we built out to this point where at the last video we ended with Japan 12, and I was questioning whether I should have moved into Persia so that I could move my stack to Persia so I could take out India and then be able to start pressuring Africa and even out the income game here, or leave them stacked in Kaza. In this particular moment, I did choose to leave them stacked at Kaza rather than a Kazakh, rather than moving them down to Persia. And the main reason I did that was on US, what was it, US 11, he moved his US stack out of Karelia into West Russia, which I wasn't really expecting. But it did make me be concerned. If I moved Japan 12 down into Persia, what if he then could move his US down here? He could even then follow them with the Russian, because there's no pressure really within one step of Moscow. Germans are 2 steps away. He could move the Russians down there, and next thing I know, I could have gotten my Japan forces pinched between the Russians and US and Caucasus and the UK down here in India, And I don't know. Maybe I could have came out of that. Maybe I could have backed back out and gotten enough units back up here to restack Kazakh. I don't honestly know, but it frightened me enough that I decided just to stay here and just trade Persia at the end of 12. So that's what got us up to this point in the game. One of the interesting facts is I didn't have any destroyers left, and he had his US UK sub hanging, or he built a UK sub, which made it hard to come back. I was really looking to try and come back and grab these guys off the islands, but now I've got 6 transports, and with only 2 battleships and a carrier, I was kind of pinned to protecting them even just from these subs. So I was in a little bit of a bind there on the Navy side as well in the Pacific, and kind of tightened into what I can do, restricted what I could do. I think that pretty much sums us because it's back to where we are. So moving forward, this was an interesting, you may have seen I had a map note there. Back in, I believe it was round 11, I had made a map note to myself, attack here in Russia round 15. So I was planning on a round 15 attack of Japan on Moscow at that point. Now, round 11, predicting for round 15, a lot can happen there. It was really just a guesstimate, but it was giving me a goal, a target, a plan in that regards. The other thing to note, when I wrote that in round 11, the U.S. was still up here in Karelia, and I was assuming they were going to come eventually this direction and not come in towards Moscow. So them coming down to West Russia obviously changes that. So on Japan 12, I ended up buying 4 infantry and 9 artillery because I realized I got the defensive power to stack Kazakh. I now need to get offensive attack power up here in order to eventually take Moscow, especially with the U.S. hanging around here. So putting them there means these guys are going to go 13, 14, 15, 16, which was interesting because when Ronald took his US 12 turn, he made a comment in the Discord saying, looks like we're planning on a Japan 16 attack, which I actually wasn't really planning on too much when I made this build. I was just thinking I need to get as much attack power as quickly as I can, and building tanks wasn't as effective, or building planes wasn't as effective as building a bunch of artillery to come up and match up with all these infantry. So he made that comment that 16, so he was going to plan on a US 16 on Berlin. That kind of surprised me. But so this was his US 12 turn. He bought 9 infantry, 2 artillery, and a fighter, and put them out there. With the US, he ended up trading the Northwest Europe and France kind of heavily over here. But he moved that stack down into Caucasus, which made things interesting to me when he's then said, okay, he's going to plan on a 16, around 16, US 16 over here. He did decide to take his fleet out of the Mediterranean. So this was a point in the game for me as well, because that meant I did not have to keep stacking Italy in order to keep my production spots, that I would not have to keep such a big stack here, and it'll free me up a little bit to move around. So this is what the war report looked like the end of round 12, beginning of round 13. Allies were sitting at 299 to my 286 on attack power, and my income was at 87 versus what is that, 107. So really, I want to see my Axis income be in the mid 90s, because then I'm splitting with the Allies. We're about even. Right now, I know that this attack power gap is going to, if everything stays the same, is going to continue to grow in the Allies' favor. So I'm on a clock to either take Moscow or to get the income up where I can balance that out. So again, he made that comment about attacking on 16. So I sat here and thought about, okay, the only way he's going to be able to attack Berlin on 16 with all my ground units and how many more I'd have, 3 more rounds of adding, is by these US getting back. So I'm counting out, okay, how can he get there? He could go US 13 to West Russia, 14, 15, 16 to get there, or he could sit one more turn and then come the southern route to get to Berlin. By sitting one turn, it disrupts Japan a little bit longer, but it doesn't give him the chance to reunite his two U.S. armies. So he's going to have to move these guys with reinforcements coming to come here 14, 15, 16 when these guys go 14, 15, 16. And that means when he's sitting 15 here, he's giving me a chance to strafe one of these, if not both of these, kind of strongly with my Germans. So I really thought, okay, so he must be planning 13 West Russia, 14 back up to Karelia to unite and pick up his rest of his army, 15 to Baltic, 16 to Berlin. So that's what I'm planning on in the back of my mind. Uh, Russia, he built these 6 infantry. He tried to take Novo, ended up just being a 1-for-1 trade. He did not capture it for the units. But again, so this is what's going through my mind as I'm setting up to play my German turn, because this is the map I'm seeing. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do here? So, Germany, I buy 12 infantry. Again, just loading up them up. I put 9 in here. Oh, I can't zoom in on this. This is the actual game. But I still had factory damage, so I put 3 in here, 9 in here. You'll see I traded Ukraine, France, Northwest Europe, West Russia, and Baltic. Now, the Baltic, I moved a stack of infantry because I realized I wanted to get Karelia dead zoned. I wanted to get as much as I could to punish him for coming down here. I wanted to keep his two forces separated. So that meant getting as many units and many German units up this way as I can, and get as much as I can to try to dead zone Karelia again, to try to prevent him from being able to do 13 and then 14 here. I didn't really know, I didn't add it up, but I did have 36 plus 10 is 46, plus the 7 is 53 units that were, well, plus these two guys potentially that were targeting West Russia. So he could still move 38, 39, 40 units plus some Russians and help the Americans there. So that was my concern. He's going to go 13, 14. I'm going to push as much as I can to try to dead zone this on turn 14 if I can. At this point, I really didn't even know if I could, but at the very least, I was going to get as much defense up here as possible. Otherwise, I traded over here. I did feel, again, I did 5 trades, 1 with a stack, 4 with air, that I didn't go ahead and trade Karelia that turn because I thought it would thin me out too much. Because if you recall, he had 4 infantry sitting in France, 2, he's got 2 down here. These are actually in West Russia, and 2 and 2. So with my 7 planes, I really want to try to trade as efficiently as I could. And I felt like trying to do 5 territories trading with air, with 7 air, was just stretching me too thin. So I left Karelia alone. So next comes UK 13. He bought 5 infantry, 2 fighters. Again, at this point, he decided to abandon India. And in the Discord chat, he said he just figured it was time to let it go. And so he moved some of his units up. He took Burma kind of heavily without any losses. And then he did the usual, traded France kind of heavily, Northwest Europe, and he took West Russia with the UK. So this is what the board I'm facing at with Japan. So at least I know I got some free income up here in the north with my guys. And I'm looking at just needing to continue to stack here because he's got a lot of forces here. So I need to grow this as best as I can here. So Japan 13 comes up here. I decided not to attack Persia. I'm going to go back a second just so you can see again. So again, because he took this heavily, and I remember I only got two fighters because I lost my entire air force. So I got 2 fighters for trading, and he's got 4 infantry there and 2 here. And I really don't want to send my artillery into Burma. I want my artillery up here on the front with Moscow. So I ended up sending 2 infantry and the 2 fighters back to clear Burma, which meant 4 infantry would have been really going heavy on my artillery just to trade Persia. So I decided not to trade Persia and just took Burma at this point. I also did go ahead and take my battleship and transport up here to be able to finally pick up these guys and start targeting Hawaii, which has been in Allied control since the beginning of the game, which I really don't like by turn 13, but it just is how things turned out. I bought 7 infantry and 5 tanks. So 5 tanks may make you go, why? There's a couple reasons that I buy tanks at this point. Um, One is the fact that these 5 tanks continue that illusion, since I already knew he had commented that I was targeting a 16. And then I had originally written 15 was my goal if the U.S. weren't here. And if you go back to that graph I made, if he's planning a 16, and that meant he was going 13 into West Russia, 14 into Karelia. So if he goes 14 into Karelia, then it's Japan's 15 turn next, which means I'll be ready to strike Moscow because the U.S. will be too far away. So that's why I went with the 5 tanks. Again, still supporting my 15, so that if he went, again, the other option was 13, sit here, then 14, 15. Either way, 14, he's 2 away from Moscow. So I will be able to then strike Moscow. So that's why I built 5 tanks on this turn and was 1 short on infantry. I wanted to maximize my turn 15 pressure on Moscow. Again, I didn't go down to India because I was afraid of getting myself, with all of these allied units here, getting myself split into 2, which is kind of what, again, I've done to him with his U.S. troops. I've split them into 2 stacks that can't reunite right now. I didn't want to have that happen to me down here with Japan. So again, I just left that open, left Persia open, even though, because he only left 6 infantry, I could have moved my transports in here and taken it. But again, I said I'm looking at 15, but as long as his U.S. troops are in here, 15 is not going to happen. 16 is not going to happen. There's a lot of U.S. troops here. So I need to continue to get as many ground going through the mainland and shucking right up through China. I can't afford for my transports to come take India and then turn around and come back and then grab more people. You lose 2 turns of shucking infantry, 7, 8 infantry onto the mainland. So I did not take over my transports. I left my stack here. I left India alone, even though I could have taken it. US 13, he's continued building his US Crown forces, put another transport in the water. He didn't do a whole lot of attacking. He took Ukraine back here. The big thing is on this turn is when he moved his US army that was in Caucasus into Moscow. And this was a significant move because, this signified a couple things here. One, it's telling me these guys aren't coming for Berlin on turn 16. It means he's not coming for turn 16. It means he's not going to be reuniting up here on 14 in the Karelia. It means these guys are being pretty much set to defend Moscow, which means I need a lot more Japan forces to overcome that US stack added into the Russia stack and a little bit of UK in here. So, 15, 16, all that's now out the window for timing on Moscow at this point. So I'm now thinking, okay, what am I going to do? What's my plan at this point? I guess going forward, the end of round 13, beginning of 14, again, allies now still have a 19 attack power. Again, I'm at 84, so I still know I'm going to be leaking attack power to him as this game continues to go on in the status quo. And since he just stacked Moscow, like I said, that just pushed it longer out till I hit Moscow, which means this is going to grow. So a little bit of a concern starting to happen here. His Russian turn, he pushed some US out here, or excuse me, some Russians out here, so that my little force of guys here now can't take these back. He's mini stacked these guys. I can't trade them. So here we're talking about that income. He just cut my income down 3 more for Japan at this point. So this is what I'm looking at going into German 14, and my German 14 turn, I took first thing in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, actually probably 5:45 in the morning, and this happens on my trade on Northwestern Europe. I go in there, 2 infantry and a fighter versus his infantry. I whiff, he kills an infantry. I continue on, I whiff, he kills an infantry, and I continue. Wait, what? What did I do? No, 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 don't do. Very bad news. Uh, I should learn. I've made too many mistakes first thing in the morning. Just click, 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 click. I would not have attacked one German fighter against an infantry, period, because those German fighters are too critical in the defense of Europe. So, ouch. Not a good way to go. So, any case, German 14 turn, I struck out with his infantry surviving the entire time. And so this starts to look like a concern. You know, is he going to try and do the stacking of Northwest Europe? I went ahead and pushed all in into Karelia to stack Karelia because his U.S. troops went into Moscow. So that allowed me to stack Karelia, do some trades up here. I left my tanks in Poland. I like this position because it gives me the ability to try to dead zone France from any stacks. I built 2 artilleries in here to help with dead zoning France in Northwest Europe. I still got them. I still got my air. Plus, these tanks can come up to Karelia the next turn if I need more defense in Karelia to continue to hold Karelia, because Karelia is a really good holding position for Axis when it's a pure northern shuck. If I can pin them there, then I want to stack that. Plus, it also leaves them able to come to West Russia, where I can move these guys down and bring them over, bring in some Japan air or tanks or whatever to help stack, and potentially set up a 1-2 on Russia as well. So I've got options here. I really like having these tanks sitting in Poland. Going right along into UK 14, 9 infantry and a fighter is his build. He moved back into India, so now any questions of coming in and taking India with the fleet is gone. Otherwise, pretty straightforward plays. He's continuing. He builds up here. I did think that my 42 and 2 was going to dead zone Finland plus my 6 Air Force. At this moment, I realized that it probably is not the case since he put a fighter and these guys in here. So I didn't do the calculator on it, but I was hoping to dead zone Finland and push these Americans back to Norway. That didn't happen. He went for West Russia. It was a 1-for-1 kill. He did not take it. He moved his 1 UK infantry here. This is just a talking point. Some people will do this. I personally wouldn't do this because the UK moving in there, even though they get the Russian territory, they don't get that IPC because Japan's going to take it back before Russia can ever collect that. So the whole point here was he moved him so that I couldn't just blitz a tank in and out and get the 1 point for free. Yeah, at the same point, this is a defensive infantry that's even better with a stack with fighters behind it as a meat shield. I'm going to kill that pretty easily. So I'm going to trade, 1-for-1 and then have 1 more infantry that could then potentially kill an infantry trying to retrade. Plus I get that point. For me, I don't think it's worth it. But certainly it's not a wrong play by any means. It's just a difference of style. So that was UK's play there. So we move on along. So Japan, we're getting ready for Japan 14. This is a nice pivotal moment as well. I get 9 infantry, 1 artillery, 3 tank. You're going to see I moved over to Caucasus and was able to stack Caucasus at this point. Again, still holding off from going to Persia, India. I'm really trying to get as much in here, put as much pressure onto Moscow as I can. The good news with my stack here, he can't get any other allied land reinforcements up from India. With my stack in Karelia, he can't get any allied land reinforcements for the north. So Moscow is shut off from any more US or UK land reinforcements. They can fly planes in there and they can build Russian and ground in there, but that's all he can do is build that 6 to 8 Russian units, not even 8 because of income. So he's looking at 5, 6 Russian units. I'm building now 4 Japan on the front line, plus the other 13 marching constantly through China. So this is turning to my favor as far as thinning that out goes, as long as I can hold Karelia and I can hold my front here. I did go ahead and I did take Hawaii. It's off the screen here a little bit, but remember I had that battleship transport that came over, took Hawaii, so I finally got it in Japan 14. Horrible timing, but it's there. We got it. Let's see, anything else on this one? Nope, Japan 14, we're good. So we move on to US 14's turn. I do like this. He used the US to trade the front lines with Japan. That's good because Russia's going to get those points and he gets to save his Russia infantry. So I was disappointed to see that, and realizing that he's got a whole lot more US here that's now sitting in Moscow means I'm going to be facing a whole lot of US trading to give Russia points, which kind of stinks. And then he blitzed in and out of West Russia. Again, he was able to stack Finland, so I couldn't push them back. So he does have a stack still sitting up there on Finland at this point. So yeah, so that's where his U.S. went. He's bringing his troops slowly back up through Africa into here. He did build 14 infantry and artillery, so again, just getting ground troops on the map, and he's shucking them away. He's got a 5 and 7 transport just shucking away. That's 14 and 10, or averaging 12, which is what East USA can produce a turn. So he's got a maximum shuck going at this point for the US and the UK, and as well. So I didn't have a war report at the end of this turn, but this is Russia's 15. So a big moment, and this is part of the cost of me going to Caucasus, is he brought a stack over into Novo, which then appears like it dead zoned. Was a sinking over here between his 2 fighters and 3 fighters and 2 tanks, plus all these 30 guys. It looks like a dead zone, which in my mind I'm just going, okay, what does that mean up here to the north? Because I've got nothing up there, back until Buryatia. So if I just trade this, he's got a US infantry sitting here. He could take all this air and that infantry and kill whatever I put in there, and then blitz a tank on through here to the north and really create a headache up in the north. So that's one of the things I'm looking at. I'm going, oh man, that's not good. However, this is the moment when my light bulb went off and my strategy said, okay, we've got a strong position. We got Hawaii now. We've got 7 of 9 victory cities. Can we close this out? Can we take France and either India or Moscow and end this game and continue to hold Karelia? Now, he's already got a pretty good force starting up here, so this is on the timer. I still got my 10 tanks and planes and Japan that I could use to come reinforce into Karelia as well, which is a nice thing about my 7 tanks on Caucasus. If he puts anybody here, I can kill him, and then blitz non-combat the tanks up to Karelia. So it is now time for me to look at a victory city win, and I'll just tell you, I sat down, I crunched the numbers, and I looked at it all. If I turn 16, not 15, because I got to move 15 Japan to Persia, and then 16 take out India. So I needed to plan a turn 16 Victory City win, which meant coming through Persia with Japan to get India, because we already said with all these US here, I'm not taking that in 16. And then I've got these 10 tanks that I can blitz through with infantry to stack France and stack Germany with the my add-on build units. Remember, he's out of the Mediterranean, so Italy is safe. So I don't have to worry about that in my plans. Now, I've got this going into my mind. I did build a couple. Oh, well, let me switch up to my German turn. I did build 10 infantry and 1 artillery. Again, I just did my calculator crunches just to see what it would take to make sure that he didn't try and stack Northwest Europe or France. And I needed 1 more artillery, so I did build an artillery up here and continue to hold my Karelia stack. With Germany, again, kept my tanks sitting in Poland so that they'll be ready to come over here. As well as I could send a couple up to Karelia if I need that to hold the stack. And so at this point, I've got my game plan set into motion. And I've got an end game plan. So UK 15 comes, he builds 7 infantry and artillery and a fighter was his build. He failed at Burma, but he does have a tank here, so I'm going to still need to put somebody in there just to block the tank blitz. Otherwise, again, he traded France heavily and Northwest Europe, and also took in 1 into West Russia there. So those were his trades there. So now comes the big Japan turn, and I have to admit, at this point is when I started playing a little bit of psychological game as well, because this entire game we're posting these turns up in the Discord channel and making some comments, and at this point I wanted to make this not obvious that I was going for Victory City grab. I wanted to disguise this. And so I made the point that I realized from those war reports, we're at a point where with his Americans in here, I gotta start playing for long game, meaning I need to get income for Japan because he's killing my Japan income. And I can't go a long game without income. So for my Japan turn, I try to play it as best as I can. So I did my calculators and I moved enough infantry, artillery, tanks with enough tanks back here and Air Force. Plus, I got my transports here to dead zone India so that he can't stay in India. I'll be able to take India in 16. And once I take India, I don't have to worry about a U.S. reprisal because the closest they are here. So they're not going to be able to take it. We're in 15. He's not going to go there. So US 16. So all I got to do is take India and I will be good here. So then it's just a matter of making sure I reinforce Karelia, France, and Berlin. So having my fighters up here is good because they can go to France, Berlin, or Karelia depending on where UK strike. And then I left my 7 tanks up here so that they can go up to Karelia if I need to send them up to Karelia to help stack and hold Karelia turn 16. So going through this whole bit, because he has this Novo stack, I did need to move all my guys down here into Sichuan because these both are dead zone. This is dead zone. Has me a little concerned because I've got nothing up here in the north, but I had to move my secondary stack down into here because of the dead zones he's created with this Novo stack. The other part of this is the Pacific. So this is my non-combat part screenshot I took out of round 15. This was my silent video, but I did take a quick screenshot out of it just to show what I was doing up here. If you recall, I had 5 transports over here, so I used one of those transports to grab a couple people and set them in C-Zone 59 with the battleship and sub, because you can't see it, but he has a US sub sitting up here still. and put 2 infantry and a battleship basically sitting here, threatening the western US and Alaska to make him think I'm going for that. I took my transport that was in Hawaii to take the 1 infantry from Hawaii, pick up the Solomons, come down here to New Zealand. So I've got a naked transport down here, looking like he can either head to Africa or even more likely head over here to South America to try to grab income that way. So in addition to setting up my Persia for India, I'm also setting up my Pacific to look like I'm going for the income grab. I make a comment in Discord that I apologize. Short games chances are over. We're settling in for the long game. Although in the back of my mind, I'm saying, nope, we're going through next turn and we're going to victory city this in 16. One of the advantages of having an open chat where you can play a little psychological, just like if you're playing in real life over the board, you can, you know, misdirect with comments. So I don't know if it worked or not. I honestly, I don't know what was going through Ronald's mind, if I was successful in misguiding or not, but that's what I set this all up to be, to look like I'm playing for that. Thankfully, I was able to keep my Caucasus stack, which means regardless, I'm still building 4 units on the front line. You can see I had made notes for just exactly how many people I needed to hold on to those areas. All right. So this is where things get interesting. So US 15. Now I actually opened the game up after Russia's turn, but yeah. There are a whole lot of missing Germans on this picture now. He attacked and wiped out Karelia. He's got 12 infantry and 1 infantry and 12 artillery still sitting in Karelia after wiping out, I think it was 42 infantry and a couple artilleries and an AA gun, and he just wiped it all out. It ended up being a 36 IPC loss for me compared to him. So in other words, I lost 12 more infantry than he lost in this battle. It turns out when I went back and looked again, I took my, was it German 15 turn in the morning, which I just need to learn not to take turns before going into work. And when I went back and looked at all my calculators, I meant for 4 of my fighters to be in Karelia to help stack that. I forgot to move them up there during my turn, and voila. Best laid plans gone to waste. Blunder, major blunder number 2. So obviously not looking good at this point. War report at the end of 15 started 16. He's now 317 to 287. He's now got a 30 IPC, 30 attack power advantage. Income, I am up to 90 at least on the income, but I know we're already in trouble. So US turn, he brings a tank and a couple infantry into Karelia. He stacks completely, has all of this stacked. I've got nothing to try and trade up there. So this is what I came to the game to look at, because I didn't see his US turn. I came in after the Russia turn, obviously. So yeah, 44 infantry and artillery gone. All I've got is my 1 infantry up here in the front. So you can see this is just, Germany's going to crumble really fast at this point. And then on this side of the screen, I'm split into nothing up in here. I can take India, yay, but I also got to realize now that Karelia is gone, this is just a wide open valve of reinforcing Moscow. So we got a long game, and we already noted income is all, I'm already behind on the income. It's going to take me a while to take Africa. He's going to be able to contest it. This is bad. This is very, very, very bad. And at this point, I knew I lost the game. Because, yeah, you know, I was it was too far behind. I needed a Victory City win to pull this off. Um, that being said, I did go ahead and let's see if I got it. Trying to figure out what to do with this. Um, I looked at it. I wasn't going to win the long game because, like I just said, Germany's gone. I'm not going to win the long game taking Moscow before him and then getting over and reinforcing. That's off the table. The only way I win is victory cities. I'm going to get India, so I'll go back at the 7, and maybe I can pull something out here where Germany can hold on to its couple, so that'll give me 8. But I got to win either Moscow or Karelia, and Germany's not going to do it, so that leaves Japan. So now looking at this, the only hope I have is this Japan unit coming up to Karelia on 16-17. And as we look at this, he's got all this Russians right here, plus his tanks that can hit me. He's got these US troops, plus these 12 artillery supporting all these infantry. I mean, West Russia's dead zoned between a 1-2 of US Russia hitting the Japan stack moving into there. So I've got to do something about that. So here is my combat move for my next German turn. 1 infantry, 10 tanks, 5 fighters going into Karelia. So yeah, that infantry, those tanks, I had to sacrifice my tanks to wipe out his artillery just to even have a chance of getting into West Russia. And so yeah, that's what we ended up doing. Yay, that I survived with 1 tank winning, living there. I built 11 infantry. I built a tank in here because, again, I'm at this point, plain and simple, round 17 is end of game no matter what. So maybe I need my 6 planes in my tank to hit Karelia again in 16 right before Japan goes into it. So I built a tank just to have something to be able to reach Karelia besides my planes, in case I need to. Yeah, so I built 11 infantry, 1 tank. So this was the end of the German turn. I won there. I did trade off France and Northwest Europe. I actually had pretty good results there. So, you know, remember he had 4 infantry there and I only lost 1. So it looks like I traded heavily. I didn't mean to, but I did. Remember, all my Air Force except for a bomber was going up this way. So yeah, I had good luck, thankfully, up in that area where I only lost 1 infantry on this side. So here we go on into UK 16. He bought 6 infantry, 1 artillery, 1 fighter. At this point, everybody in the world knows I've lost the game. um, so he does go ahead and move out of India because I had dead zoned it and he recognized it. So he moved them on out. Of course, this would be quite a headache for Japan to have guys moving this way when I'm trying to move this direction. At this point, though, again, I've already decided, you know, this game's going 17 rounds. This game's over no matter what. So this is kind of irrelevant to me because remember, this is UK 16. So UK 17, they're not going to get up here. Well, I can make sure he doesn't get the tank to be able to get up here to blitz through. So we're going to be okay in that regard. But now comes the big decision on, okay, so how do I get these Japan units through West Russia, because I don't have time to go this way, through West Russia and to Karelia to stack Karelia and get sneak by this. So the only way I can think about it is, again, I'm still playing a little psychological and Discord, and you know, I'm saying I'm just throwing all the chips in, and I'm going to go ahead and build. Well, I'm going to build 1 infantry, 4 tanks, and 2 bombers. I built 4 tanks up here in the Caucasus. I moved my stack, including those 5 tanks I had here. I moved as much infantry as I needed to India and used my transports from 61 to take India. I had to get enough here to prevent to create a dead zone from these guys retaking India with, again, these fighters could still reach there. So, and even this bomber, I believe, well, the bomber may not have been able to, but at least the fighters could. So I needed a dead zone, so I had to bring these guys over because I needed as much of my Persian troops to come back up this way. So all those artillery I sent into Persia, I brought up to Caucasus. So this is what I did. Not a single one of these is stacked. He could kill any one of these stacks between his Russians and Americans. I really wanted to leave him to leave West Russia alone. So 10 artillery and 7 tanks, that's a pretty ripe target. The other 3 tanks came from over here, and the 4 tanks I built. I made it look like I'm building as much attack, well, at the same time, I'm building as much attack power as I can to attack Russia. 10 infantry and 11 artillery, again, a very ripe target. So 21 units, 17 units, or he could go for the 61 unit big kill in West Russia. So I'm hoping to be able to move these guys to Karelia. But if he does the 1-2 to wipe out these guys, I'm hoping that I've got enough left over here in Kazakh and Caucasus then to attack Moscow, and that's why my fighters are in range of Moscow, and I built these 2 bombers in range of Moscow to help support a attack on Moscow, because J-17, I either got to take Karelia or I got to take Moscow. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I'm just stacking up my best odds that I can do. Again, I'm playing this little game over here in the Pacific with him. I brought that transport back up, brought my other battleship over because I didn't need to protect this. And I'm just sitting here ready to put 2 battleships into Hawaii in case he develops, if he builds a transport over here. Plus I've got 2 battleships in the sub dead zoning the West USA sea zone. So I'm really kind of protecting here. He'd have to build a massive fleet plus a couple transports because I'm going to land 4 infantry into Hawaii if he puts a West USA fleet in. So I've really kind of made sure that I'm just making sure I'm holding on to Hawaii in that case. Originally, I was just going to take my carrier out here and just send my 4 transports naked over here, but then I thought, well, that might show that I'm just giving up on the transport. So I sent my carrier over here knowing that he's got this sub sitting here that could attack them. But I figured, earlier in the game I did a carrier versus sub, so maybe he just think that's normal that I did that. So I moved the carrier down here after all, despite the fact that I really knew these transports weren't moving again. They're done. Their game's over. So yeah, we're not stacked up here, and we've got these fighters where we can move them wherever we need them to go. So here comes US 16. He builds 11 infantry, 3 artillery, continuing just, oops, sorry about that. Continuing to just build up his forces, moving back and forth. He did attack Caucasus. As you can see, he killed those 10 artillery with a strafe from the Americans. And then he did, I put a little smiley face. He attacked C-Zone 35, my carrier, with his bomber. I didn't even notice that he had a U.S. bomber up here. I completely missed that one that could fly down. And my carrier wins again. So my 4 transports still live. That's the second time the carrier won a battle it shouldn't have won. So my little smiley face there. Again, it really wasn't relevant as far as I was concerned because they're done. So this is a good sign. This is not a good sign. He's now 91 attack power up. My income back down to 88. This is not a a good situation, a good war report to look at. But I did notice that that meant, here we go, the Russians came in and they just attacked and wiped out that target-rich south and just flat out stacked Moscow. So Moscow, even with my armies there and my bombers, fighters, is not an option. But he let the West Russian Japanese live, and again, their target never was Moscow. Their target was Karelia, and this was the best case scenario for me because at this point I'm thinking, okay, I've got a chance to take Karelia because he doesn't have enough there to prevent me from taking Karelia. Again, we're now into round 17. I already told you this is the last round. There's no getting around it. This is it. So every team except for Russia gets one more chance. So here we go. I did take again. I took India down there, so I now have India. So I'm up to 7 out of 9. So I need to stack France, Berlin, and Karelia to end this game. And it's German's turn. So I got to figure out what to do here. The good news is these Japan fighters, they're not going to be needed for attacking. They can be added defense to either Germany or Berlin. Excuse me, France or Berlin, depending on what's needed. So looking at this, I was taking into consideration what all they needed. As you can see, this is what I did. I moved 25 infantry and a tank and an AA down here. I built 8 infantry and 2 AAs to put in here just to kind of talk through what I was looking at and what I had to consider. There was 2 attacks. So the red is my attack, the attacks that he could do on Berlin. So he had his transports here that could grab artillery and infantry to attack. He's got all his fighters and bombers from the UK. These guys can't reach Berlin or France, so I don't have to worry about any of those fighters. But any of the Air Force in this area, I do got to worry about. He's got his cruiser. He then has 7 transports from US that can grab off of here. There's 1 artillery there. So that's going to be 12 infantry and 2 artillery, plus his fighters, his bomber, his carrier, or excuse me, his battleship, his cruiser. And this is where I pulled out the calculators and put in the defenses. Over here in France, one of the things I needed to pay attention to, again, he had his lead attack with the UK. Americans, he's got 9 transports that can hit, plus 1 transport off here that could come up to Sea Zone 6, grab the infantry and artillery, come back and attack. So I needed to remember that when I did my calculators, is remember that these guys in Norway can be picked up and brought back to France. The guys in Finland could not. He could not go all the way up there and bring them back. So only one of these transports could hit France. But that's still 10 US transports and the UK transports that could hit France. So you can see how I built it out. This is what it looked like. And these were the odds I gave him. I gave him 55% chance. This is a 55% defense chance. If I were, on here, and a 48% chance on, no, excuse me, he had a 55% chance, yeah, that I would win, and basically a 48% chance that he would win Germany. Basically, the whole point, it was essentially both of them are 50-50. I actually made France be slightly better defended than Berlin, which you might say, why? And the whole why was to attack Berlin means he's got to take transports out of the shuck, from going to East USA to come in here. So if I win that 50-50 coin flip, then he's got 7 US transports that are out of position. And whereas if I let him, if they come attack France, they're all right here and they can come back and grab more people and come right on back. So they're not that far out of the shucking position. So I gave him a better chance on Germany than I did on France. Plus, I thought that it might raise questions and he might go, why is he doing that? And just kind of glance over it, so to speak. Again, I'm in the Discord chat. I'm like, this game's going to be over tonight. And really, again, using a little bit of psychological warfare in the game as well. So next up comes UK 17, and that's the big thing. He did not attack either France or Berlin. He chose to trade and bring people up to Karelia. And at this moment, when I opened the game, I knew I won. This is the end. I've won the game because there's nothing that he can do to take these. The U.S. can't take these on alone, and I'm going to be moving my Japan stack right in there. So his build's kind of irrelevant. I did circle down here. His sub did kill my carrier, so those transports went down. He moved his mini stack into here. Really didn't matter. They didn't attack India. That was what mattered. So obviously at this point, he did not see me going for the victory city. I had disguised it well enough um, that he did not see the urgency to attack France and Berlin, France or Berlin, or even India, at that matter. So Japan moved on up there, stacked Karelia, moved my fighters over. This now gave him less than a 1% chance on all three of these victory cities. Uh, and I went ahead and just killed that U.S. guy. Not that the U.S. guy was going to kill 13 infantry of mine, but anyways, I took care of him. So 1% chance to win there. To finish the game, the U.S. did do a attack on France to try for. Germans held on easily, and that was the game. Axis victory. So just to look at the final map of an Axis victory, you can see Japan's got absolutely nothing back here with a Russian spearhead coming right through it. We got our little stack on India. We got our big stack on Karelia. Germany is down to all their units are simply on these two territories. Um, but we got our 9 out of 9 victory cities. So I don't think you'd look at this map other than the 9 out of 9 and say that this is going to be an Axis victory. This is one of these games where very rarely have I don't even know that I've had this happen before where I've won when I'm obviously so defeated, to put it frankly. Final war report. Again, he had an 82 point attack power advantage. I was down to 79 income at this point. He was going to just walk all over me. But at the end, it was a victory. We get to move on to playing Jan in the finals, and I'll be recording that and sending that up before too long. But very interesting game. I hope you enjoyed it. Very topsy-turvy, especially the ending there where I knew I had lost and then all of a sudden I knew I won. Um, Again, I did have the advantage of this being on a Discord channel with posting and an audience that I was able to play a little bit to that to try to mislead Ronald. Again, I don't know if any of that worked at all, if that was part of what helped hide the Victory City battle I was going to or not. But end of the game, we got the win. Moving on, Ronald's a fantastic opponent. Number one, he was the number one Axis player last year, and if you look at his Allied record, he's just as strong on Allies. So uh, very, very lucky win for me in that regard. So great game. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll have more stuff coming out in the future.